All right, good evening. We are still in chapter 4, Perek Daled. Yesterday we were discussing some errors in thinking that people make about wealth. Specifically, people who think that wealth will bring them validation. They want the image, they want the, the reputation of being a wealthy person. They think that's going to make them feel good about themselves. And we spoke about that. Okay. And we also spoke about the fact that because they're chasing that self-esteem, that they end up doing foolish things to make a living that really doesn't help them at all. And they would have made the same living whether or not they did those things either way. Okay. So we're going to continue now. We're still talking about the issue of making a living, trying to straighten out our thinking regarding Parnasa. Let's look inside the text. One finds among those who seek wealth that one person attains all that he desires of it through the means that we have mentioned. What does it mean, the means that we have mentioned? The Marpal Nefesh says this means the various forms of work and labor that we discussed in chapter 3. Or to use our Hasidic terminology, the kalim, the vessels that one uses to receive Hashem's blessings for Parnasa. Okay, so that's the right way of going about it. So there are people who get the wealth they need in the appropriate way just by making a vessel in the way that we explained already at length. Umehem, and there are others, mishiagia elov b'derech hayerusha v'hadeim alazeh. Some people receive their wealth through inheritance and the like. And it's interesting, v'yachshav, and he thinks, or each one of them thinks, ki asibes chivulai es zeh, that the cause is what mandated it. Meaning, v'lulei hein lo hoya magia elav mimenu klum, without the particular way in which they made wealth, they wouldn't have received the wealth. And therefore, umeshabeach hasiba mibaladei hamasabev. They praise the means through which they received the wealth, and not the cause with a capital C, Hashem, who brought it about. In other words, they get very fixated on the way in which they received the wealth, and they think that that's what it was. So one guy worked for it, another guy inherited it, and each one thinks, I only could have gotten it in that way. Couldn't have gotten it any other way. Why? Because that's the way that he got it. But that's not true. If he wouldn't have gotten it through that way, he would have gotten it through another way. It's like, I used the mashal earlier. Actually, I got nice feedback from someone who says it was a helpful mashal. I talked about the kela is like the UPS guy. So the UPS guy brings you a gift from your mother. Your mother sent you the gift. It's not the UPS guy, right? So if it wouldn't be this guy, if it wouldn't be this driver's shift, it would be another driver's shift on the day that it was delivered. Okay, if it wouldn't come from this kli, it would come through another kli. But it's not about, like he says, one guy worked for it, one guy inherited it. Okay, so that's just the way it happened to work out. But it was Hashem who made it that this guy should get it through regular work and this guy should get it through an inheritance. By the way, you know the one about the two greenhorns. They arrived at Ellis Island around the same time as each other on the boat. And they didn't see each other for years. And then one day they're walking down Delancey Street and on the Lower East Side, and they run into each other. And one looks like he's struggling, and the other one looks like he's really made it. So the struggling one asks the one who looks like he made it, says, Yankel, we both got off the same boat in Ellis Island. And it looks like you made it in this Medina, and I'm still struggling. What's the difference between me and you? So Yankel says, I'll tell you, Chaim. The truth is, it was a combination of good old-fashioned hard work and a bit of mazel. Yeah, hard work and a bit of mazel, that's right. Hard work and a bit of mazel. I'll explain. I was down to my last nickel. So I took that nickel and I bought an apple. And I spent the entire day polishing that apple. And then at the end of the day, I sold that shiny apple for 10 cents. Next morning, I took those 10 cents and I bought 2 apples. And I spent the whole day polishing those 2 apples. And at the end of the day, I took those shiny 2 apples and I sold them for 20 cents. The next day, you know what I did? You bought 4 apples? That's right. I went out and I bought 4 apples. And I spent the whole day polishing those 4 apples. And at the end of the day, I sold those shiny 4 apples for 40 cents. And every single day for a month, that's what I do. I continue this system. I buy more apples, so I polish those apples. And then I would sell those apples. And I finally, I accumulated a profit of over $10. That was the hard work. And then my wife's American uncle died and left us $10,000. That was the bit of mazel. Okay, anyways. Let's continue here. Okay. So the bit of Bachaye says that this person who assumes that it was the kli, it was the particular way in which he received his livelihood, to which he owes thanks, to which he owes gratitude. He's making a big mistake. He's making a big mistake. So he explains here. Let's continue. What is he like? He's going to give us a mashal, a parable. What is this guy like? He's like a guy in the desert, who's suffering from thirst. He finds water that's not sweet. He finds not nice water, brackish water that had gathered in a pit. He's so happy about this, and he slakes his thirst with the brackish water, the not nice water. And then he goes on a little further in this desert where he is. He finds a wellspring bubbling forth with fresh water, sweet water. Doag alma shekodem mishesoisoi hamayim horishenim uravoisei mehem. He regrets the fact that he had drunk of the brackish water and slaked his thirst with it. You know about the guy in the desert, by the way? This guy was walking in the desert, similar to this mashal here. He's walking in the desert. He was so thirsty, so thirsty. He was looking for water, and he's walking. And he saw an oasis. He saw a guy there, a person in the middle of the desert. And he comes over and says, "Oh, please, give me water. I'll pay anything." He says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have water here. This isn't an oasis. This is a tie store. I sell ties." Who would have thunk? Right in the middle of the desert, a haberdasher selling ties. He says, "I don't need ties. I need water." "I'm sorry. I just have ties." So he continues walking. And he's walking through the desert, and he's walking. He's so thirsty. And then he sees another, looks like an oasis, another guy. He runs over to him. "Oh, an oasis. I'll pay you anything for water." He says, "I'm sorry. I don't have water here. I don't sell water. I sell ties." Like that other guy, he also sells ties. I don't need a tie. I'm in the middle of the desert. I need water. I don't want a tie. He says, "I'm sorry. That's all I have. I just sell ties." "Oh, okay, fine. Forget it." And he keeps walking. And he's so thirsty. And he's looking for water. He's so thirsty. He's in the desert. And he walks. He sees another, looks like an oasis. He sees a guy up ahead. He runs to him. He says, "Oh, an oasis. You have water?" He says, "Yes." "Really? Please, sell me water. Sell me water at any price." He says, "I'm sorry, sir, but to be served here, you have to be wearing a tie." Okay. Once upon a time, people actually had to wear ties to go to a fancy restaurant. About the guy who tried to get into, this is totally unrelated, but Indian. The guy tried to go to a fancy restaurant, and he walked in, and the maitre d' says to him, "I'm sorry, to get into this restaurant, you have to be wearing a tie." So he ran out to his car. He's looking for a tie. I can't find anything. He opened up his trunk. He saw a pair of jumper cables. So he's like, what the heck? He took the jumper cables. He tied it around his neck like a bolo tie, like those Western ties that, cowboys wear. And he got a pair of jumper cables around his neck. Jumper cables, So he's wearing these jumper cables around his neck. And he says, "Can I come in now?" And he looks at him and says, "Okay, fine. But don't start anything." Okay. Anyway. These are good. These are good jokes. All right. So, okay. Oh, I got a note here, by the way, about the shiny apples. If he doubled his money every day, starting with 5 cents, would he not have $100,000 after 30 days? Yes. When I tell the joke next time that way, I will remember to tell it correctly. Yeah, it's amazing when you double. It's like the story about the chessboard. Everyone knows that one, right? About the chessboard. The guy who invented chess, supposedly. And then the king wanted to reward him. He says, "What's your reward?" He said, "I want 1 kernel of wheat on the first, like on the chessboard, the first square. And then the second square, I want 2 kernels of wheat. And then the third square of the chessboard, I want 4 kernels of wheat. And each square of the chessboard, just double the amount of kernels of wheat." It's like, okay, the guy wants a sack of wheat for inventing a game, no problem. And then he did it, and he realized that mathematically, if you keep doubling it each time, it ends up like being all the grain silos in the entire kingdom, and he became like the wealthiest guy in the country. And you can go figure that out mathematically. I don't even know how many boxes are on a chessboard. I don't know. I'm more of a stratego guy, by the way. So on Nittel, we're having, by the way, a stratego tournament. I'm having a stratego tournament. I like stratego. I like set up the bombs and the flag, and the 8s can disarm the bomb. And the spy is interesting that he can kill the 1, but everyone else kills him. But if he attacks, he can even kill the 1. Anyway, okay. So you'll figure out how much wheat the guy who invented chess got in the made-up story about the guy who made up chess. Okay. But yes, with the shiny apples, he had $100,000 at the end of the month. That is correct. Okay, fine. What else? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we were in the middle of a mashal that the guy who credits the means of making a living is like a guy wandering in the desert, and he gets to the water, and the first pit of water is not nice water, and he drinks that. And then he keeps walking. He's like, oh, then he finds like the nice water. He's like, I wish I would have waited. It's like, you eat a bunch of crackers and hummus, and then you find out that they ordered pizza. If I knew they were ordering pizza, I wouldn't have eaten crackers and hummus. Okay. So it is with a wealthy man who acquired his wealth through a certain means. And what does that mean? The Teva Lavonin says either through working really hard, meaning harder than he has to, because he was mistaken about that. And the Pasalachim says unethical means, that he broke rules he shouldn't have broken, but he thought he had to. Either way, the point is, at this part of the metaphor, it's clearly talking about a mistaken course of action. So the Teva Lavonin says the mistake he made is he worked too hard. And the Paslachim says the mistake he made is he did immoral stuff to make his money. But either way, the point is, somebody who makes a mistake chasing the money when he didn't have to, if those means had not been made available to him, he would have acquired the same thing through other means. Kasher higdamnu, like we already explained. Okay. And again, the Teva Lavonin says without the difficulty. And the Paslachim says in an ethical manner. Both of them say consistently with what they said. But he thinks, no, because I had to work that hard to make the money. What's the proof? I worked that hard to make the money. Or I had to break rules in order to make the money. What's the proof? I broke rules in order to make the money. Right? That's not a proof. That's not a proof. He would have made it the same way. By the way, somebody sent me a text. And I would give out my number for texts, but I don't see 90% of my texts anyway. The best thing is the email address that I've been giving out, rabbi@soulwords.org. I generally get all those emails. And will Bli Neder respond. And if you ask a question about Shaar HaBitachon, Bli Neder, I'll try to respond in the class. But somebody sent me a text this morning, actually. And he said, what about shtick? You know what that is? You know what shtick is? Shtick means stuff that's not clearly unethical, but it's like, you're being creative. Is that stuff that you should do? Maybe that's a kli for parnasa that Hashem is presenting you with. And I can't tell you what's over the line and what's not over the line, but the story last night, was it last night or was it 2 nights ago, about the Jew who saw the pile of gold and he says, you know what, Hashem, if you want to give it to me a straight way without any questions. So I think it's clear that making a living shouldn't really be agonizing. And if you're agonizing over the morality of what you're doing, that itself is just way too much mental effort. The whole point of it is Yegia Kapecha. Yegia Kapecha, you're supposed to make a living with your hands, not Yegia of the Mayach or of the Lave. You're not supposed to be toiling with your head and your heart. And if you're sitting there agonizing over whether it's moral or it's not moral, you know what? I'm not a Rav. I can't paskin. I can't tell you whether this shtick is okay or it's not okay. But if it's keeping you up for even a minute at night, how is that any better than staying up at night worrying about having to work harder? Neither of them are kosher. You're not supposed to stay up at night worrying how you're going to work harder, and you're not supposed to stay up at night worrying whether what you're doing is ethical or not. So that's really the answer. To me, the answer is if it's taking up too much headspace, and too much headspace means any headspace outside of the time when you're working, then it's not okay. And you don't need to do it. You're torturing yourself because your parnasa, the same parnasa, whatever was meant to get to you is going to get to you. All this extra exertion, does it increase the bottom line? HaLevavos says clearly it doesn't. It doesn't. And he says, but my proof is that I made all this money from this. But that's not how you made it. It would have come to you anyway. Now, how do you prove either assertion? I don't know how to prove either of them. Because the guy who's going to say the proof that I needed to do it this way is that I did it this way, which is circular logic. And then the counter-argument is, no, you could have done it another way. How do you prove that, though? You can't prove yet either of these. So it's not about logic. My point is neither position is logical. Okay? They're both faith. One is just faith in the pseudo-logic of, well, it had to be this way because it was this way. I had to do it this way because this is how I did it. Right? And the other is the faith of believing in Hashem, the creator of the heavens and the earth. So either way, it's faith, it's not logic. Ukemei she'amar, and like it says, ki ein la'Hashem matzor le'shia b'rav oy b'ma'at. Nothing can prevent Hashem from saving, whether by many or by few. Hashem is going to get to you whatever He wants to get to you. And you don't have to be fixated on the idea that there has to be a certain kli. Now, the Marpal HaNefesh explains a little bit more about this mashal, this extended metaphor. He says that basically this thirsty man in our parable, that he had no faith that he'd find fresh water. So what happened is when he found the not nice water, he felt like he had no choice and he had to drink it because he doesn't know if he's going to do any better than that, right? So you got to lock in at the mortgage rate. But hold on, what if the rates go even lower? Oh, they might not go lower, so you got to lock in. So you got to drink the. All right. Anyways, but if he would have been guaranteed fresh water, if he knew, okay, skip the brackish water, because if you just wait it out and you go a little bit further down in the desert, there's going to be fresh water. Okay, then he would have waited. So here's the deal. Somebody who believes that his sustenance comes from Hashem, he knows Hashem is going to find an appropriate way for him to earn it. Therefore, he knows that he's not going to have to do any shtick. He's not going to have to do anything unethical. And he's not going to have to overwork himself. He's not going to have to be, emotionally attached and become a workaholic. So he has to know that there's going to be fresh water. And if he has the chance to make money, but it's not fresh water, it's brackish water, so to speak, he has to have enough faith to say, no, let's keep going until we hit the good water. Just like a person who knew, like imagine you look on your Waze and you look at this gas station. Oh, I don't like this gas station. Oh, but there's another one coming up in 1 mile. So let's wait a mile and we'll go to the nice one. Okay? The same thing. He hits an opportunity. This is how the Marpel Nefesh explains the whole mashal. He hits an opportunity to make some money. It would work, but there's something to it that either he's going to become too emotionally invested, or he's going to have to compromise his values. He has to say to himself, just wait, and fresh water will be available. And I'm not going to lose anything by waiting it out. That's the mashal. Okay. We have a private chat. It says, this all sounds very well and good, but how do we live by these teachings of the Chovos HaLevavos? Reality just doesn't seem to work this way. Okay, so I would ask you, what does it mean reality doesn't seem to work this way? Like what evidence do you have that it doesn't work this way? Because, like I was saying before, because you saw that people did work very, very hard and become obsessed with their work and they ended up making money? Yeah, okay. But the assertion is he would have made the same money either way. And we know people who fall backwards into wealth and they didn't work. So we say reality doesn't work this way. Why do we think reality doesn't work this way? This is based on a lot of assumptions that we're making about how people actually get their wealth. In other words, what do they say in science? Correlation does not imply causation. Is that the lashon? Somebody sent me here. Wes nit ganvenen, wes nit hoben. Yeah, sage advice, right? That's very inspiring, right? If you don't steal, you won't have. And the fact that such words are formulated in Yiddish is painful to say the least. Okay, if at least it were in English, you could say, it was from a foreign source. But the fact that it's in Jewish language, look, there are a lot of nisyones. And they all have one thing in common: fear. Every test is about fear. Now, some people fear not having enough money. Some people fear being lonely and having nobody. Some people fear being unloved. Some people fear violence, pain. Everyone has different fears. The nefesh habahamis, the animal soul, is the survival instinct. And its job is to listen to your fears and tell you to get away from things that are scary. The problem is that sometimes it works as a survival instinct, sometimes it doesn't. And what I mean by that is, if you're walking through the woods and you see a bear and you get an adrenaline rush, oh my gosh, there's a bear. And so you get the fight or flight response. Probably don't fight the bear, probably not a good idea. Although they do have a mnemonic about the different kinds of bears. You want to know it? In case you ever encounter a bear in the woods? They say, black attack, brown lie down, white good night. Ever heard that? Black bears are little bears, generally speaking. So if you really have to, you could fight one. Brown bears, you better lay down, because if you lay down, then you make yourself less threatening, because there's no way you can fight them. And white good night, white is a polar bear, and there's nothing you can do with a polar bear. Although they say if you run from a polar bear, if you throw something behind you, he'll get distracted with it. And while he's looking at it, because they're very curious, while he's looking at it, you may be able to get to safety. Do you know that in the town of Churchill, Canada, it is illegal to lock your car doors? Because they have no theft, there's no crime there. But the reason that it's illegal to lock your car doors is because they don't have car theft, but they have polar bears wandering the streets. So a person may need to run into a car for shelter from a polar bear. And so therefore, car doors have to be unlocked so that any car you see, you're able to run in, close the door, and be sheltered from the polar bear. At any rate, what was I saying? You're in the woods and you see a bear, and you have a fight or flight response. That's your survival mechanism working for you. Okay? Because that's something that's actually happening in your immediate environment. And your brain reads this stimulus. Oh, I see a bear. And it makes an interpretation very, very quickly. Run, get out of here. You don't even have to think. It's like the nervous system. It's it's a gut reaction. Automatic, right? Okay. And that's all great. And that's when fear works for us, right? Or, you step onto the curb and you see a car swerving toward you and you panic and you jump out of the way. That's when the fear serves us well, okay? But then there's fear that's not a response to anything that's going on in front of me. It's fear that's generated by thought. I'm lying in bed awake at night thinking about financial pressure, thinking about being lonely, thinking about being unloved, thinking about violence that could happen to me. I'm just trying to remember the different examples I gave before. Okay. Now, none of those things are happening right now in front of me, but in my mind they're happening. I'm playing that movie in my mind. And you want to know something funny about the survival mechanism, the fear response? It doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know the difference between something that's actually happening in front of you and you have to jump out of the way, and something that's just a movie you're playing in your own head. So it's telling you, run, run, run. Run where? Where are you going to go? Wherever you go, there you are. The thing you're afraid of is something that you are telling yourself. So there's nowhere to go. So here's the thing. Financial insecurity or any other insecurities we have. Nobody likes me. Nobody wants to be my friend. Everybody laughs at me. All the insecurities we have. Or, some terrible violent thing's going to happen to me. All the things you could worry about. All the things you could stay awake worrying about. Those are meditations. Toxic meditations. And there's no relief from them. Because they're not a response to something that's actually happening. If it were something that's actually happening, if a guy jumps out of the alley swinging a baseball bat, eventually I run away from him, and when I finally get home and I lock the door behind me, and I call the police and say, a guy jumped out of the alley with a baseball bat. Okay, and then I can calm down, and now I'm safe. But if the fear is that I'm sitting awake at night, telling myself you're going to die penniless and lonely and a failure, where am I safe? Where am I safe? Nowhere. I'm not safe anywhere. So this is what I want to tell you. That, and somebody wrote here about shidduchim. Very, very, very good. Shidduchim is the same thing. It's the same thing. And that, by the way, can touch a nerve in a way that's even worse than our insecurities about money. Yeah. And you can stay awake at night, meditating yourself into terrible fear. The Chovos HaLevavos, the approach is do the natural thing, okay? So in parnasa, that means have a job. In healing, that means go to a doctor. In shidduchim, that means call a shadchan. And if the shadchanim aren't working for you, call a friend. Make one call a day about shidduchim, okay? But don't become overly emotionally invested in it, because it's just the vessel through which Hashem is going to deliver his blessings. And certainly don't become fearful so that you're going to think to yourself, God forbid, that you have to work harder than you really need to work or make compromises in your values that certainly you don't have to be making. But like I said earlier, it all comes from fear. The antidote to fear is faith. Faith is the antidote to fear. You know what fear is? False evidence appearing real. Question here, what about ruchnius fear? What do you mean by ruchnius fear? Fear that I'm not enough of a mensch, I'm not serving Hashem as well as I can. That's a valid fear. You know why? Because that's something you can actually do something about. Hakol b'dei shamayim chutz miyiras shamayim. Is that what you meant? Fear about kids, worrying about your children. Yeah, you see I'm a man, or I would have mentioned it. Yeah, you can stay awake at night worrying about money. You can stay awake at night worrying about shidduchim. Stay awake at night worrying about your children. There's all these things we can stay awake worrying about. It's not real. It's not real. Respond to the situation. Take care of the situation. Make a kli b'derech hateva. Do the normal, responsible thing. And then say krishma shel alamita and lie down and go to sleep. And have chassidische chalaimos.